All right, this is called puro piso. We know we create God with the brain. There's no God. People that believe in God has been being fooled for thousands of years by very intellectual people. Because, see, the only way you can control the masses is by controlling their brain and keeping people ignorant. The more ignorant they are, the more gullible. Faith is always inversely proportional to knowledge and information. The more faith you have, the more ignorant you are. There is no God. Here are some examples of machines, temple machines done 2,000 years ago. A very, very clever scientist.
And his cult combined elements of both Greek and Egyptian religions. Ancient texts tell of the bizarre mechanisms which were used by the priests in Serapis' temple in Alexandria. In particular, one mechanism continues to astonish today's modern world. Amazingly, ancient writers describe a chariot that seems to fly through the air on its own, as if by magic. How could ancient inventors have conquered gravity 2,000 years before our time? What was at play in the temple? And how did ancient inventors really create the wondrous mystery inside? Texts on science, mechanics, art, and philosophy were collected and studied by Alexandria's inventors and engineers. They knew the Greek secrets and used scientific laws to build magnificent temple mechanisms to evoke the gods. But could they have harnessed forces that we would not have believed possible? Perhaps the most extraordinary story of temple machinery from Alexandria came from the Serapeum, the temple founded by Ptolemy I in honor of the god Serapis.
Yeah, Alexandria was the city of learning. All the scientists went over there. A lot of the traders and merchants, so-called Jews today, they flocked over there. And Ptolemy Philadelphus was the one that created the Septuagint. He gave all these people, these 70 translators of the books of Moses and all these fairy tales. See, you control people with superstition and all these magic tricks. People that are keep the masses ignorant. So this is connected dots. Septuagint. Moses never existed. Abraham or Moses never existed.
The Serapeum at Alexandria was one of the great temples of the Mediterranean world. It lasted well into the Roman Empire and indeed survived until its destruction in or about 391 by the Christians.
Of course. The Christ-Catholic, the theocratic people, the Christians burned it. As they burned the Library of Alexandria. Anything with intellect people, they burned it. But they fell to the tricks. They were controlled by some of the priests and all the fairy tales has stagnated the intellect. That's the reason Christianity is a disease, it stagnates the intellect even today. They still believe in the fairy tales.
Ancient texts record how a lifting device known as the Oracle of the Dead was used for strange and occult rituals.
See that?
Amazingly, people were given narcotic drinks and taken to a darkened cave.
See?
Here they would see the priest suspended from a crane like a modern-day magic man. To people at the time, he appeared as an apparition of the dead, flying above them.
Exactly.
Could the ancients really have created such an elaborate machine?
Yeah. They use it on
In the
temples.
foreseeable future, the truth about the Oracle of the Dead is likely to remain a mystery.
To fool out the retarded
Still
people.
discovering the secrets of how and
The religious
why
idiots.
machines were used
Priests
by
are
the
pretty
great
smart.
civilizations of antiquity.
I guarantee if Chris Angel in Vegas, the magician, if he, instead of saying that he's a magician, he became a pastor, he would have so much people believing that everything he does is miracle. If he said that he just channels God and Christ and some Jesus, and that's the reason he performed. I guarantee that he will have an audience of hundreds of thousands of people believing in him. They're easy to be fooled and conned.
The temple machines of Alexandria were extraordinary and awe-inspiring inventions. The scale and richness of the temples themselves were vital elements in drawing in the worshippers. Temples, in fact, had a function very different from today's worship. And the priests made sure that the temples were fit places for the gods to dwell.
The house of the gods. And if you're housing an immortal being, it's got to be impressive.
The design of temples became standardized. Examples can be found not only in Greece, but all around the Mediterranean.
ancient Greek temples were put together in a quite particular way. There's an external colonnade, there are triangular gables or pediments at either end. Inside the colonnade there's a walled building which you entered through a very, very impressive door, and once you were inside you would find yourself facing one or more divine statues.
The most magnificent image of a god that we know from the ancient world was a huge statue of Zeus, the king of the gods, at Olympia. The statue
To know is that all these temples were treasure houses. That's where the money was kept, because the faithful gave money to the gods in the temple offerings, and that's exactly the same thing like the Catholic Church does today. You see all these gold altars in Spain and all that, exactly. And in those days, the so-called Christians or Jews or Muslims built their churches, synagogues, and mosques on top of the classical temples, and the gods were actually switched. Same thing.
Yeah.
These types of cults had dark inner secrets and strange practices. This would be the ideal climate for the most mysterious machines from the ancient world.
Exactly.
There were all sorts of
Artemis.
bizarre cults. There were cults to all manner of gods and deities, and some of these took the most bizarre forms and rituals. One of the strangest of the cults was probably the cult of Cybele.
The cult of the multi-breasted mother goddess Feeble had its origins in Asia Minor.
Or Artemis.
But in the start, the cult of Feeble was associated with mystery, danger, and violence.
Kibele means cube.
It didn't help that in around the 9th century BC, when a priest tried to bring the religion to Athens, he was quickly murdered.
It's a cult which was given to extremes that were extremely unpalatable. For instance, that one of the things that worshippers do is gash their skins so that they run with blood.
One particularly extraordinary temple machine was created, which showed the mother goddess Feeble spontaneously lactating at the height of the ceremony.
Sacred blood.
As the pressure built up, the milk came from the mother goddess, to the wonder and admiration of the spectators.
Yep. Everybody will believe that way.
Let's not forget, blood was sacred liquid. Milk was equivalent to the semen, the river of life. So those two liquids, milk, semen, and of course blood, were sacred, were a manifestation of the gods. That's the reason all the torture and salvation with blood and all that crap.
To see the all-powerful gods crying tears of blood must have been an astonishing and disturbing experience.
Yeah, it is today for the Christians.
Heron's designs were unrivaled in their brilliance and ingenuity, and his use of physics and hydraulics provide tantalizing evidence for ancient technology experts like Richard Windley.
Inventiveness and subtlety in a lot of these devices. There's lots of things in the drawings which seem to be nonsensical, and when one actually comes to the practical business of constructing them,
In the Middle Ages, the priest came up with the idea of the Greeks with all these tricks on the sculptures. And the one in England, in Boxley, England, is the crucifix, is proof.
Christ on the cross is the main focus of attention, and it allowed the medieval viewer to contemplate his suffering.
His agony on the cross is a powerful image.
Right.
In the Middle Ages, such statues were made as lifelike as possible. At Boxley, the statue went one step further. From lifelike, it came to life. In response to a supplication or possibly a donation, Jesus would open his eyes and move his lips.
Lying on the wall, we have painted images of heaven and hell.
We learned that from the Greeks and the Egyptians.
A Tudor congregation. And the moving Christ made this real. If Christ smiles, you are safe.
Yep.
You will find salvation.
That's right.
You will find your way to that heaven. If Christ frowns, then hell beckons.
Oh, yes. We have to give more money to be saved.
What caused a lifeless wooden statue to move and speak?
So if you believe in resurrecting zombies in this 21st century, you're either extremely ignorant or suffer from a psychosis. Pace de oro.